This is the South African tie, by the way. It's the South African tie with all the animals. You've seen it before.
Yeah. Yes.
So you can hear me and see me?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So last time we were talking about the 71 war.
Yes.
And I made a comment that the army spends a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to achieve something.
Right.
But the politics throws it away.
Yeah.
When we go to peace, the Indian government so far is very what you call Raham Dil, soft-hearted. They think that we have to have peace. Therefore, they let the other guy off so that they hope that the quarrel will stop. And the 71 war, when Indira Gandhi was at the Simla conference in 1972, to settle the issues of the 1971 war and to return the 93,000 prisoners that we had got. The conference went on for 3 days with no result because she wanted the other side to accept the peace that she was wanting, and the other side was not accepting. That is, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who became the president of Pakistan,
Right.
and his daughter Benazir was also present. And we had some very good bureaucrats helping Indira Gandhi. We had a chap called Haksar, you may remember his name, one of our top foreign service officers. And we had 2-3 others advising the Prime Minister. But on the last date, the very last night, they all thought that the peace parleys in Simla conference, 1972, had failed. At midnight, the Pakistan delegation was leaving next morning. So at midnight, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto and his daughter were called by Indira Gandhi. And she gave them certain concessions to accept the peace. Now, the first concession that was given is that Indira Gandhi wanted an international border in Kashmir between what Pakistan held and what we held. And now, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto couldn't accept that. He said, if I become the president of Pakistan, my people will throw me out if they find that I've given away my demand on Kashmir. So the whole of Kashmir has to be ours. So anyway, she said, all right, we'll call it a line of control. Line of control has been established, 1972 Shimla Conference. The line of control, which changed the erstwhile ceasefire line, meant that it was like an international border, and both sides agreed that no side will cross this line of control, either by intelligence operations or terrorist operations or by military operations or by any other means, except if you have a proper visa and the other side is permitted your travel, and then you can travel across. And Zulfikar Ali Bhutto signed that and accepted that. But in the event, when you sign a deal with Pakistan, they never follow the deal. So how do you decide on a peace which has been signed? But when he goes back, he says, we will do 1,000 cuts, that we will take our land back and all that sort of nonsense.
Right.
With the result, because the Pakistanis don't follow a treaty that has been signed, there's always conflict. So the army has always suggested to the politics that, with an evil nation, you cannot be so merciful that you let them off the hook when you've really got them where they have to obey your orders. And in your desire for so-called peace, we'll only create more conflict. So the first lesson that I want to convey here is that for an evil nation, which is full of terrorism, and where the army attempts to rule because of the threat of Indian invasion, and the army does not want to give up its rule in Pakistan, they have got terrorists in Afghanistan, they've got terrorists in Pakistan, they've got some internal terrorism acting against themselves, plus they've got external terrorism acting against India. And they say that the good terrorist is the one who acts against India, and the bad terrorist is acting against us. And there's some ridiculous statements coming out from there. And therefore, if a conflict takes like this, we have to enforce what we want to keep that nation under control. Now, there is another question that I want to discuss here. Many people ask me, why don't you attack them and finish them off? That is also not an answer, because there are so many million people in Pakistan. They don't have enough food, especially their children. They are not got a good economy. They are dependent on outside nations and the International Monetary Fund for their finances. If the administration collapses, there'll be chaos in that country. And when there's chaos, what happens? Millions of refugees will start coming into India, because this is where the green fields are, this is where we are organized.
Right.
And when anything goes wrong with our neighbors, they come to running to India.
Right.
So therefore, the administration in Pakistan has to be allowed to function. Now, having said that, there's a lot of political problems here, and how it's eventually going to be sorted out, I'll quote much later when I was the army chief and we had some certain parties that Pakistan is not mature enough yet to think of a peace with India,
Oh.
because their children have been brought up in hate. The schools and colleges teach them only one thing, that the biggest monster on God's earth is India, that the whole of India should actually be Pakistan. But the devious Hindu mind has managed to take away our country and blah, blah. So therefore, we have to get it back. Looking back at the Mughal rule and the Islamic emperors prior to the Mughal rule, that's about 700 years. Now, this is what we've got on our neighbor. As Mahatma Gandhi said, that you can choose your friends, but you have to accept your neighbors.
Yeah.
And therefore, how you deal with them is a political problem. Militarily, they're no match with us. Now, I was talking about the blood and tears that the army spends. I'll give you one or two instances. You know, in the western border, when we went in from the Samba sector in an offensive by one corps, led by Lieutenant General K.K. Singh, there was a huge tank battle that was known as the area of Basantar. The Basantar is a little river. We crossed that river through the minefields, and the Pakistanis attacked us with a whole brigade of tanks and 2 brigades of infantry. We crossed the minefield. We were not very many people there, but those of us, we had about 3 or 4 tanks across the minefield, plus we managed to get a couple of companies of infantry. Those people fought so well that despite those counterattacks by the Pakistanis, they held firm, that little brigade across the minefields, till we could build up more troops. In that action, we got 2 Paramveer Chakras. One was Arun Khetarpal, a young second lieutenant, who fired his tank so efficiently and so effectively by firing his gun that he pulled a large number of Pakistani tanks which were attacking. And even to the extent that when one of the Pakistani shots set his tank on fire, and the fire was engulfing the tank, his troop commander sent him on messages, please get out of your tank and get your crews out. And this boy said, my gun is still firing, Pakistanis are still attacking, I am not leave the tank as long as my gun is fired. So he died in the fire of his own tank, but he killed a large number of Pakistani tanks. His action is even praised by the Pakistani armored corps and infantry who were attacking at that time. Now, supporting the bridgehead was a company of the Grenadiers, and the Grenadiers company major was a Major Hoshar Singh. He also very firmly stood his ground, supporting the tanks. And since there were a couple of brigades of Pakistan infantry attacking them, he held his ground. Large number of people were killed, but he did not give up his position. He also got the Paramveer Chakra. So you got 2 Paramveer Chakras in the Basantar battle. Plus the tank brigade commander, that's the armored brigade commander, was Arun Vedya. who had got a Mahavir Chakra in the 1965 war outside Khemkaran. He was commanding Deccan Horse at that time. Now he had become a brigade commander, and he did an excellent command so that this battle could proceed with full support, with full gun support, etc. He got the Mahavir Chakra. This was his second Mahavir Chakra. So he has got a Mahavir Chakra and Bar. And like that, a number of people were awarded. Even the commanding officer of Pune Horse, of which Arun Khetarpal was the leading tank troop, was a person called Lieutenant Colonel Hanuj Singh, who took his tank through the minefield, prayed to God and all that sort of thing, and he managed to get through without exploding. And he helped in this battle to a great extent. So he also got the Mahavir Chakra. So I'm just telling you the amount of loss of lives, the bravery shown by young officers and by lieutenant colonels commanding or majors commanding the little units to shed their blood to prevent the enemy from having any success. Now, yes, you get them, give them these awards and all that sort of thing, but at the end of the day, the government doesn't give the military that much support. They keep cutting your pay after after each war for saving their finances or whatever. There's one other story I'd like to convey. After the East Pakistan was captured, the whole of 2 corps moved to the west, as I told you, under Lieutenant General T.N. Rena, and they took over the southern Punjab area. Now here, Indira Gandhi declared a unilateral ceasefire on for the West. After 16th of November, we had made the ceasefire in East Pakistan, created the nation of Bangladesh. And for the West also, she declared a unilateral ceasefire after about a week or two. If I recollect, it's about the 21st of September, so that we would not attack Western Pakistan, which we could do for 2 reasons. And number one was that we brought additional troops from the east to the west very efficiently. And therefore, we had the capability of offensive action in the west also. And our armor division was ready to attack, and it had not been used. Here, because of the unilateral ceasefire, we were all quite surprised that why we didn't go into Pakistan. I think there was some pressure on the Prime Minister from the United States and from then Soviet Union to say, call it off, because any attack on Western Pakistan will not be acceptable. So perhaps this is one of the reasons. This is what I want to convey, is that a third world country like us has to obey the orders of the hukam of the superpowers, because they control the votes in the United Nations, which can bring the rest of the world against you if they decide to go against you. As you in your country become more powerful, a different ball game starts. So what happened in 71 was a position of economy and military strength. At that point of time, we are much superior now. Therefore, we can open our mouths a little more than what we could do in those days. So anyway, since it was declared that the 21st December would be the last day of fighting, that night, the whole of Corps artillery of Pakistan came down in a big series of attacks to destroy as much of Indian side as they could, and we did likewise. Now, the one story I want to tell you is that we had a very good general of the Indian Army called General Tara Singh Bal, belonged to 7th Cavalry. He's been our ambassador after retirement in Argentina. He's still remembered over there. He had 2 sons, both in the army. His elder son was also in the same regiment, 7th Cavalry, and was commanding a squadron of PT-76 tanks, which are very thin bodies. See? So his squadron was in support of the Wagah area of an infantry battalion. And this heavy shelling started off. And the company commander, or rather the battalion commander of the infantry, was in a dugout with heavy overhead protection. You know, when you have you dig about 7-8 feet into the ground, and so that your command headquarters can get inside there, and you cover this. You first put corrugated iron sheets, and you put logs of wood, and you put sandbags, and you put a whole lot of earth on top. So you had about 4 or 5 feet of earth and wood and so on above the heads, so that shrapnel, etc., from artillery fire does not affect you. So since his tank was outside, the battalion commander told his major, Tara Singh's Bal's eldest son, that look here, your PT-76 is a very thin-skinned tank, and Pakistan medium artillery is coming down. Any shell lands even nearby will make a hole in your tank and probably kill the lot of you. Why don't you bring an extension cord of your radio set, come into my bunker, and you can control your squadron from inside here. So this major agreed, and he left his 2-man crew inside the tank, but he took a lead. A lead is a long extension lead for your radio set. And he came into this bunker with the battalion commander, and he could control through his radio set his troops which are in front, while this artillery bombardment from the Pakistanis was going on. Medium artillery, heavy shells. As luck would have it, a medium shell landed right on top of this bunker. Everybody in the bunker was blown out because that shell is very heavy. It blew up the whole bunker, including its overhead protection, and everybody died, including this major. And his 2 or 3 men in the tank crew were perfectly safe. This is luck, or is it fate? We will discuss that point in a little while. About what controls who dies and who doesn't die. These are some of the stories for this. I want to talk about J&K for a few seconds. Jammu and Kashmir had a lot of terrorism going on in Kashmir, as it is much better now after the removal of Article 370. But in those days, a lot of terrorism, and the then government was supporting some of the leaders of this terrorist movement, like the Hurriyat Conference, for instance. They were openly talking against India, and yet we were protecting them with the CRPF so that they don't. I asked one of the ministers, I said, what's the matter with you chaps? These chaps are talking against India all the time. They're all pro-Pakistan, and you are protecting them with the CRPF in case they're bumped off by somebody.
Yeah.
So they said, well, you know, if they get bumped off, we'll be blamed that you bumped them off. I said, so what? They're antagonistic to the nation. Either arrest them and put them in jail or bump them off. So what's wrong with it? No, but we know a warped sort of non-violent thinking or whatever it is. We see in the Mahabharata that the Lord Krishna telling Arjuna to get up and do your duty and fight, not sit back there and become a weak person because you feel that you don't want to kill somebody else. Right. So this is the J&K. When Pakistan was defeated with 93,000 prisoners, the complete terrorism in J&K stopped. They got so afraid of the power of the Indian army, in the Indian armed forces, that there was no support from Pakistan since Pakistan had been defeated. The president had been removed, and Yahya Khan was the president. He'd been sacked, and he became a non-entity. And Zulfikar Ali Bhutto was pleading for peace with Indira Gandhi in Shimla. So no terrorists had the gumption to do any terrorist attack for almost a year in J&K. We had peace and quiet. That shows that when your reputation as a powerful nation goes up, then the terrorists are too afraid to take you on because you might sort them out. They've started again now because they've seen our weakness of trying to be very soft to everyone. All right. There's one aspect. After the ceasefire was declared, we stayed in that position for another 7 or 8 months because we waited for the Simla conference to be finished. The war was over in December 1971. But I think we didn't get back, or rather, we didn't decide, we were not permitted to move out till about June, July next year, in 1972, after the Simla conference was done. And then after that, we were ready to move, and also there being peace, we were allowed to move around with each other. I'll put a little side story to you here. Because from RIMC, one of my colleagues, a person called Major Balwinder Singh, he was also in the Armored Corps. He went up to the rank of major, and then he resigned because he had a huge farmland near Fazilka, which is on the border, southern Punjab. And so he had to look after this farm because some family member had died, and it was his responsibility. So he was still there running his farm. And he rang me up because once the peace was declared, our communications were connected with the civil exchange. He rang me up and said, "Look here, there's a wedding in my family. Some niece or somebody was getting married, and we've got a big show. And you people who come from Delhi have no idea what a huge show we have for our wedding. So I would like you to invite on my behalf the general officer and all officers of the armored division to come and be our guests. We'll give you plenty to drink and we'll give you plenty to eat. There'll be dancing and there'll be big fun, and you finish your war, time that you sat back and enjoy." So I said, "All right." And my general agreed. So all of us repaired to Balwinder Singh's farm to enjoy his hospitality. So while we were there, we went through this beautiful show, and I asked this chap, I said, "How much land have you got at southern Punjab?" He says, "I've got about 1,000 acres here, you know, cotton fields and so on." So I asked him, I said, "Who works the labor for your cotton fields?" He said, "The Mazbi Sikh."
Okay.
Now, the Mazbi Sikh is a clan of Sikhs which are from the lower caste.
Right.
They are dark in skin,
Right.
very hefty, big hair and all that. Some of them make two judas. Very powerful people, very good troops. But though Guru Nanak Ji had suggested when he started the Sikh religion that there is no caste, everybody is equal. In fact, the first Panch Pyaras that he established were perhaps of the lower caste. See, to prove to everybody there is no high caste and low caste. Though he himself was from the Brahmin class. And even today, amongst the Sikhs, you have the Sudis and the Bedis who are descendants of the Brahman, of the Guru and of the Brahmin class. But there are the Sandhus and the painters and all that sort of thing who are other castes and creeds. So though there's supposed to be no caste, but actually there is a caste. And the Sikhs who belong to who are tillers of the field, who have been kings in that time, in Patiala, the Maharaja of Patiala and that clan, and also Maharaja Ranjit Singh when he was king of Punjab, the fighting groups, the fellows who till this land are the best fighters. So they're mostly the ones who get recruited in the military. They're mostly Sandhus in the Punjab. They look down on the Mazbi Sikh because it's a lower caste. In fact, they're not allowed to go to the Golden Temple and read the Guru Granth Sahib because they're considered low caste. So many of them do their own gurdwaras and have their own readings of the Guru Granth Sahib. Nirankaris, for instance, or the Radho Swami Vyas group, and so on. So now these Mazbis were there. So I said, how do you control them? Because they are people who are very criminal in nature. He said, well, we have to work them very hard. So from morning at 6 o'clock till evening 6 o'clock, we rubber them in the fields and make sure that they're completely dead tired so they don't get up to any mischief after they leave. And then they come in the evening, and we have got a canteen where they can buy stuff. And they are paid daily wages because they don't have enough money to stuff. Maybe they can go to the canteen and buy whatever they want for their homes, which is sang. It's on an account list. Then they go to another kiosk which has drugs in it, which are mostly coming across the border from Pakistan. So they call it a red pill or a green pill or a white pill. All of them are various qualities of drug. And they are smuggled along with arms, etc., across the western border from Afghanistan and Pakistan. It's a big trade, and everybody makes a lot of money. So it's available there, and the chap has to sign for whatever he wants. He takes those pills, he has those, and he's out for the count, so that he doesn't get up into any mischief. Otherwise, at night, if he's alert, he may be killing people or taking revenge, which If somebody killed his great-great-grandfather, he wants to go after that family and kill somebody there. So that sort of criminality is controlled like this. And then finally, he has to show the amount of money he owes. He's paid his daily wages, but the actual money is not given to him because that is the debit account for the stuff that he's bought from the canteen and the drugs he's bought. So they reduce his monetary take, so he has no money. This is how they control the labor in the cotton fields of southern Punjab. Very interesting way. Of course, when they join the army, we have our discipline and all that sort of thing, and we control these chaps, and they're very good troops, very, very good troops. And God help the enemy is opposite. So that's it. We learned all that in Punjab. The cotton districts of southern Punjab, like in Bhatinda, for instance, and another town called Malot, which is across the Indira Gandhi Twin Canals, closer to the Pakistan border, they are very, very well off, the people who own these fields, because the labor is reasonably cheap, and they make a lot of money selling cotton all over the world. They put up cinema halls and everything, but the local people come there for a very low ticket. They are not washed, so there are a lot of smells there. So the gentry have a higher part in the higher rooms, where the projection room is. Next to that, there's a huge suite of rooms with a thick glass between this area and the hall below, so that the smells and noises don't come up to the top. Thick glass through which you see the film, and you've got controlled loudspeakers and so on, from which you can hear what's going on in the movie. And in these rooms, you've got toilets, you've got dining rooms, you've got sitting rooms, air conditioned and all that. You can lay on your food and have your ease and also watch the movie. There's nothing like that available in Delhi, right? So we used to be invited for this because we were the military and we had saved Punjab in the war. So to that extent, they said, you people come here, free viewing of film, for any film that you want, and free dinner, free everything for you. We should take advantage of that and enjoy our social activity after the war. When we wanted to go back, then the whole armor division was moved back to Jhansi. Tanks went back and the convoys went back. And since I was the Colonel GS, I took time out to visit my father in Kangra, the same house that you've seen in Dad. And spent a few days, and then from there I drove back to Jhansi, the Colonel GS. Now, when I arrived back there in Jhansi, peacetime work was being done. That's a peacetime training, very close association with the BSF and the training school in Tikampur, which was run by one of our retired brigadiers very well. But he used to invite us across. He wanted 3 tanks to be sent so that his BSF troops could see what a tank looked like and how to utilize them for any training. So we sent 3 tanks to them, and they were very happy with that. And they laid on stuff for us in Tikampur. And I must give it to that brigadier. It's an army brigadier. The BSF is an interesting organization. I'll talk more about it later. But it has been organized by retired military officers. But the police officers, that's the Indian police, which is central government police, who run there, they're the ones who get promoted and control these units and battalions and whatever they are, go up to DG level and so on. But the army officers who've raised the place are not promoted. They kept there because they retired from the army or they left the army as temporary commissioned officers. And so that is how they run. But the discipline and the training is done by retired military officers, especially in Tikampur, which I saw. And that's very effective. Now, there's another story involved here about fate. My general had to go to Lucknow from Jhansi. It's about 2.5 hours run. And we had to go to the Eastern Army, to the Central Army Commander, the Army Commander of, who was based in Lucknow. And my elder brother, who was the brigadier at that time in the engineers, was there are two engineer brigadiers there. One is the chief engineer of the command, and the other was my brother, who was from the military engineering services. He was controlling a brigade there. when there were floods in Lucknow and the canal broke up, it was his job to sort it out, which he should do. So he had a house there, and my general went there, and we had a day off. So I was staying with my brother and my sister-in-law, my bhabhi, his wife. She came to know that I'd been superseded because everybody else became brigadier and I was still a full colonel. So she said, "You come with me. I've got a very good Jyotish
Acha.
in the middle of the Lucknow town. So I'll take you there and find out what your future is." I said, "Okay, fine."
Yeah.
So she took me in her car and we went to the middle of Lucknow town. And there was a chap called Topa, Topa.
Okay.
T for Tangiers, Tanganyika, all right? T for Tango, Topa. So this chap was a numerologist. So he asked me, "What's your name?" So I said, "Vishwanath Sharma."
Yeah.
He said, "No, sir, just a minute. When I ask you your name, I want to know by what name you are called at home."
Okay.
So I said, "I'm called Sunny at home."
Yeah.
He spelled it out. He said, "What are you called in your unit?" I said, "I'm called Titch." Titch is a small chap. See?
Oh.
So he noted that down. He said, "What's your date of birth?" So I said, 4th June 1930. He said, "Is this a real date of birth as per your military records?" I said, "Yes, this is on my military records, 4th June 1930. So he sat back with a pencil and paper. He did some squiggles on the paper, which he was calculating. He said, "All right, Colonel, according to my calculation, you're going to have 5 promotions."
Okay.
So I started calculating on the full colonel. Promotion 1, you become a brigadier. Promotion 2, you become a major general. Promotion 3, you become a lieutenant general. Promotion 4, you become an army commander, who's also a lieutenant general, but of a higher pay and rank.
Okay.
Promotion 5, you become army chief.
Okay.
So I said, "Look here, I'm already a superseded officer. To becoming the army chief is impossible." He said, "I don't know. These are calculations I've made and this is it.
Okay.
The government may give you a promotion elsewhere. I don't know." I said, "No, you're talking absolute nonsense." So I said, "All right, what age do I retire?" So he calculated. He said, "You retire at the age of 60, 60. I said, "Well, even the Indian Army chief retires at 58.
Okay.
Now, how can I retire at 60? He said, "How do I know? The government may turn you out of the army and take you into the civil government or something and give you a promotion there and retire you at 60. I said, "You're talking absolute utter nonsense. And I'm not going to pay you a penny for it." I said, "All right. Have you got a diary?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Please turn to," this is about May or June 1972. He said, "Please put the page in October 1972. Let us say, give you a date. Let us say 21st of October 1972. Is that all right?" He said, "Now write down here. I say that you will receive a letter from Army headquarters to say that you are fit for further promotion, that you're going to be promoted to the rank of brigadier." He says, "When that promotion comes, I don't know, but your letter will arrive on the 21st or 22nd of October. And so I recorded that in my diary. So he said, "All right, Colonel, now you're going to go very far in your life. So now," I said, "how do I pay you if it comes true? Because I'll be away and, I'm not going to send money by post or something." He said, "No, you don't have to do anything. I've written 3 books on numerology.
Okay.
So whichever unit you command, should this letter come, all the units in your command, tell them to buy this book.
Okay.
If they buy this book, I'll be happy because I'll get all the money." All right. So Nivedita, on the 22nd of that October, I received a letter from the MS branch of the Army headquarters that you have been found fit for promotion to the rank of brigadier, provided you continue with your present state of good working and disciplined working. You will be promoted in your turn. I got that letter.
Wow.
And after that, as per my promise, since I was the Colonel GS of the Armor Division, and there must be about 70, 80 units there, I told them, all of them, to buy this book of numerology as a suggestion, and most of them bought it, and so that is that. It's very interesting because he made this prediction when I was a superseded colonel. in 1972.
My God.
And sure enough, by 1988, I became the army chief. And
How?
not only that, the retirement age of the army chief was made more from 58 years to 60 years, and I'm the first man who retired
Okay.
at
Okay.
age 60. Today it is 62.
Mm.
Because as life progresses and we become more fit and healthy, government saves a lot of money by retiring you a little later
Mm.
rather than giving you a pension.
Mm.
See? So now,
Wow.
when you go to battle, who dies, who lives is anybody's guess.
Mm.
I told you in my covering of the 65 war that you're going and people on the right is killed and somebody on your left has lost his limbs and you're fine. Why? So, of course, the Western nations laugh at this. That you people believe in fate and all that sort of thing. But if a numerologist can predict so accurately
Wow.
your future,
Right.
that is your destiny.
Yeah.
So that's how we believe that in war. For instance, when I was courting my wife, and I told you earlier that I told her that, we should get married. So she said, why should I marry a military officer? You'd go and die somewhere and I'll become a widow for my life.
Mm.
And I told her that who's going to die and not going to die is nothing to do with the job he's doing. You could be crossing a road and you can be killed.
Mm.
It's a matter of your fate or your luck.
True.
And in any case, so what if you become a widow? If that's your fate, you will be a widow. So what's wrong with it? Live your life and enjoy it. So she thought that answer pretty good and she eventually said yes, as we all were very happy to learn. So it's interesting to see whether what we do and where we do it is our own volition or whether it is ordained. I'll quote it to you once a poem by a person called Henley. It's called Invictus. I don't need to give you the last
Yes.
word, where
Yes.
he says that it matters not how straight the gate.
Yeah.
Straight is how narrow the gate, the path to
Right.
heaven.
Mm.
It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. The scroll is what St. Peter is waiting for you at the entry to heaven to say whether you should go to hell or to go to heaven because of your bad deeds or good deeds. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul.
Mm.
Now, it's a very interesting thought. Many people say that when you're going through life, your intellect tells you how to solve the problems that you face. I mean, you must, in your progress through life, you may have a pathway, you do a turn left or do a turn right. It's up to you to decide. But whichever way you turn, the fate is accordingly ordained. So therefore, if you've got a good intellect and you can guide the actions of yourself and your relations with others based on your intellect,